international to Saskatoon, where Mike is on the line. Hello, Mike. You're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, guys. I'm just going to change the pace up a little bit. I don't know if you've seen this because this news just came out about Robin Williams, and apparently he's committed suicide.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly, yeah. Sorry, I'm a little emotional about it because depression is still something that is kind of taboo to talk about. I guess people aren't comfortable with it.
Sure.
Well, I know in my family, there's been issues with depression. I've had depression. I've been suicidal before, and I have had a family member commit suicide. And I guess with the younger members of my family, we're more likely to talk about it, but my parents don't like to talk about it. And I guess for some reason, it just kind of struck me. Usually, I don't care when a celebrity dies, unless they're maybe someone that I had some affinity for, and there's not many, but for some reason, this one just kind of hit me a little bit. And,
well, who doesn't like Robin Williams?
I think that's part of this. The guy's a mega star.
Yeah, and how it's so sad, right, that Robin Williams has been responsible for bringing so much happiness to people's lives. I mean, smiles to people's faces.
Potentially the funniest guy on the planet.
He's one of them, for sure. I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire, Mork and Mindy. I mean, so many just iconic, classic, comedic roles that I'm sure have touched millions of individuals. For him to have brought so much joy to the world, but yet still be struggling with depression. At least that's what the release that I saw here, his wife made comments about how he had recently been really struggling with depression, and how ironic that he's so great for that everybody in the world has been enriched by this man's life, and yet he is depressed. It's really sad.
And when I was younger, I didn't understand it at all, and I dated a girl that had sort of clinical depression for a while, and I didn't get it. I thought, can't you just choose to be happy? Can't you just get over this? And then later on in the years, as I started going through my own stuff, I started realizing how the reality of it, that it takes, treatment. Like for me, is therapy and medication helped me a lot. And, it's sad to see that someone, felt so much pain. They felt so much pain that they chose to die. If that's what really happened. But, obviously suicide does happen. But to feel so much pain and I remember a few weeks ago you were talking about that fellow in Keene that had shot himself when he was surrounded by the police.
Mm-hmm.
And that might have been anxiety about what was about to happen. But I just, sometimes people have so much pain that they would choose to die. And, and it can go in sort of all sorts of directions. I might call back sometime to tell my story about how the government has kind of screwed me over. It's caused some of my own pain and depression. But that's all I really wanted to say. Was I just wanted to highlight this sort of thing, that if someone does have pain and depression, it's hard. It's easy to judge someone. Or I used to say, they must be cowards. They took the coward's way out. It's not cowardly to end your pain. I don't think that anymore. It takes a lot of guts to make the decision to actually do something like that. It's scary. It's really scary. And I'm just less judgy of people now of that.
I'm less judgy too. I used to be outraged when people would commit suicide. I mean, here you have the only gift you really get, which is life, and then you throw it away. And I never understood it. Fortunately, this isn't one of the things that I have to deal with in life. It's not going to be the thing that happens to me. At least I'm highly skeptical.
You might end up with some sort of terminal disease where you're like, screw
this.
That's
not depression.
Okay.
That's
you were talking about suicide, not specifically depression.
Fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the conclusion I've come to is that people make lots of decisions in life that I'm never going to understand. They're just not. I'm just never not going to understand. I don't understand why people want sexual reassignment surgery. I don't understand why people vote Democrat. I don't understand why people want pineapple on their pizza. I don't understand. But it doesn't matter whether I understand or not. Whatever it is, those people that want pineapple on their pizza must be experiencing a tremendous amount of pain if they would go and do that to themselves, right? So why would I judge?
a lot of times people feel alone in their depression, and that sort of gets
ironic, right? Because there's so many people who are apparently suffering from this.
Yes, it is. They're not alone.
Which is why I was surprised when you guys were saying it's like people don't talk about it. Really? I see stuff about depression all over the place.
Well, mental illness is considered taboo. It's got a negative connotation. I think even calling it mental illness is insulting to people who suffer from depression. I want to let the listeners know that there is always someone to listen if you're in a depressed state or considering suicide. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is always available 24 hours a day, and it's 1-800-273-TALK.
1-800-273-TALK, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. So, Mike, you brought this to the table tonight. What was it that inspired you to, come forward with this? Because, like you said, there's this taboo apparently.
Well, I guess the taboo, like what was just pointed out, is more about the mental illness part, and where people. I don't call depression a disease. It's not like that. It's not like having cancer, right? It's a condition that is treatable and recoverable, and I guess it's taboo to tell people that you've had depression. Like, I'm not talking just being blue for a few days. Depression and being blue for a few days because you broke up with your girlfriend are different things.
Sure.
And even amongst my friends, there has been a trend more lately to be more open with it. And sometimes you find out about, oh wow, this person had depression, and even me, I've had it, and I still sometimes think differently about my friends that I know have had depression or have had to been medicated for some reason because of it. It's so weird, and I'm 40, so maybe it's my age, or I don't know, or it just wasn't talked about much when I was younger. It was still made as a joke, and so I guess I'm just hoping that there's better understanding of it. And like I said, I even used to be more of the can't you just get over it, or can't you just be happy, and that was my ignorance. Really, it's just ignorance. I didn't have the knowledge, and that's what it was.
Thank you for the call tonight, Mike. I do appreciate you sharing that with us, and feel free to check in with us again. Toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. Well, now, okay, so I understand where he's coming from. Like, there is a clinical depression, there's chemical imbalances and things like that. But isn't there also something to being positive? I mean, doesn't that help? Right, like for me, that's been helpful in my life to think positively, to look at the things that are good in life rather than the things that are bad in life. I mean, if you have a problem with depression, changing the way that you sort of narrate your life could help, right?
No, it's like telling a paraplegic to just go play basketball. Like, some people don't have the ability, like they're not in the same mental space that you are when you say, well, I'll just choose to be happy. This is a bad situation, but I'll just, choose to look at the best part of it. It's in my experience, that's not what it's like.
They just can't do it. You're saying,
right? You're asking someone to do something that they can't
about themselves, or positive affirmations.
I think those things can be trained. They can be learned.
That's what I say. You have to take it takes practice. It takes effort to do things like positive affirmations.
Oh,
which,
yeah.
To me, when I first started doing them, they felt very silly. I mean, I felt ridiculous saying them, but they're very important now. We can talk more about it here in a moment. 855-450-FREE, and it's absolutely a process. 855-450-3733. It's Free Talk Live. Got Gavin on the line, listening in St. George, Utah, to KZNU. Hey, Gavin.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
You're on the air.
Hey,
Go ahead.
I was just listening to you guys on the way home, and I wanted to share something that kind of helped me out. I had a personal tragedy. A very dear friend of mine committed suicide back in May. It's a quick little thing here.
Please.
It's not my quote, but I'd like to share it if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So somebody asked this gal online, and I can give the credit. My educator wife said, "Make sure you tell them it's not yours." But somebody asked her how depression felt, and this is what she could come up with. It feels like I'm walking upstream through a current strong enough to pull me over 10 times over, to pull me under 10 times over. There are others walking with me, but they're walking along the banks, telling me to just get out of the water. But instead of extending a helping hand, they just move on and leave me behind. Every once in a while, I find a rock that is strong enough for me to lean on, and I can rest for a bit. But the rocks always get tired of holding me up, and when they let go, I'm left drowning, throwing 50 feet back again. And nothing is harder than standing up in that current when everything in you is telling you how much easier things would be if you just let yourself get dragged under. So that's it. Maybe it reads better than it sounds on radio. I'm not really sure. It really rang true in my life, and you know, given the tragedy, I guess, that happened with Robin Williams recently, I'm sure that's what spurred on this talk. And you know, and it just kind of struck a nerve with me when I read this, so I wanted to share it. I apologize if it doesn't come off as well.
No, I thought it was
radio as I believe it.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Shocking.
Yeah, this is what I've heard is just sort of, it's hard to get out of bed, and it's hard to want to do things. You just don't want to do it.
Well, I know I can, you know, of course we can only speak from our own personal experiences, and you know, those obviously shape and mold the way we think and who we are. But I can say, you know, in my own personal life, there's definitely been times where, you know, where I've struggled with depression, and I think that that you guys were talking earlier about, you know, the stigma that's attached to, you know, describing it as mental illness, you know. And I think the only way that we can get past it, and you know, it's not an epidemic that's going away, you know, it's not a disease, you know, that's going to be eradicated. But I think you know, some of that stigma can be detached if only there's more people brave enough and willing enough to, you know, admit that they have indeed struggled with you know, those sort of things as well. So, as I said, just wanted to share with you guys. I do enjoy the talk show. I consider myself, you know, quite the libertarian. Although, given where I am in the country, it doesn't often feel like it. I don't know if you guys know much about Utah, but I'm definitely out here on an island. I'm a transplant. But
all right, man. Well,
you know,
hey, thanks for sharing your thoughts tonight, Gavin. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Y'all have a good night, all right?
Thanks for the call. The toll-free number here is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Derek J., you used to work at one of these hotlines. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like his characterization of depression as that is in the quote that he shared. And about mental illness, he brought up the stigma of mental illness, that people think there's something wrong with you, or that you're just not motivated enough, or there are these people on the sidelines that are just like offering advice, like, oh, just pick yourself up. And for people suffering with depression, it's just not like that. And I gave the analogy of it's like telling a paraplegic to go play basketball, but it's something like that with mental illnesses that I think people don't. If I were walking around with a broken leg, people would say, "Oh, how'd you break your leg?" Or look at that. But mental illnesses you can't see, and so people are more want to hide them. They don't want to be as open about it. And I think that's what creates the stigma. Like Gavin in St. George was just saying, you know, people aren't talking about it.
Maybe it's harder to empathize because, you know, if you see somebody with a broken leg, you can think, boy, that would be terrible to have a broken leg. But with the depression thing, maybe people who haven't experienced the severity of what these folks are talking about just can't really envision what that must be like. I mean, I've certainly been down and out a little bit here and there, but nothing like throughout months or anything like that.
And a lot of times, for a lot of people, not everybody, but they want help. Did you hear the part in the poem where they're, you know, they
reaching out?
Yeah, you know, they're reaching out. Well, they want help. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm sort of busy in my life. I had a friend who this happened to, and I tried over the course of days to be there for her. But then over the course of weeks, I'm like, this is an attention black hole, and I'm just not interested in this.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to be mean, but my life is mine, and I'm jealous of it. I protect it jealously, and when you've got a situation like that, it's like, you know, what am I supposed to do here? I'm not a psychiatrist. I've got to make a living. I want my own free time to do my own stuff. I've got to sleep.
Yes. And it's hard to find the line between, like, which are just your loser friends and which are people who are actually suffering from a mental illness. Like, it could just be that they're lazy and unmotivated and they want your attention all the time. And that could be...
And depression's an excuse.
Right. It could be, a real time suck, like Mark was saying. And so that's why I recommend to people, you know, rather than, if you have friends who you can talk to, great. That's you're really lucky. A family... That's even luckier. But if you don't have someone to talk to, there are free phone lines that are manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always ready to take your calls.
I'm glad we came back to the topic and we can continue it here in a moment, especially if you have something you want to add. We'd love to hear from you at 855-450-FREE, the toll-free number brought to you by ProXPN. That's 855-450-3733. More on depression here in moments, because I understand that there's a chemical depression, but is it possible that you could just put yourself into a depression from having really depressing negative thoughts on a constant basis? And can you change that? It's Free Talk Live. I think so. And don't let depression be your excuse for not calling Free Talk Live tonight. We do really want to hear from you. It's interesting to get that kind of perspective on what it really means to be depressed. I'm like our earlier caller who, I mean, I guess I can empathize somewhat because everybody's been down and out before at some point. Everybody's
down and out kind of means poor.
Some bad
blue
news.
Is probably
Blue?
the best term
Okay,
to use.
bummed
Yeah,
out.
bummed.
How about that?
Bum's a good one. That's fine.
Everybody's been through that. Everybody's had a tough time in their life that has been difficult. But most people come out of it. Now, obviously, there's this clinical depression or chemical depression where people are medicating, as I understand it.
I don't know if anyone knows what depression really is.
Okay, well, there are
I
people
think we
who
can
swear to the drugs.
We can just examine, the effects of when people take certain drugs or if they live a certain way. Like, we can just examine what we can see, right? But I don't think that there's a chemical imbalance that's really being measured in people's brains. I think that's a myth.
See, I can't say I know much of anything about it. I mean, I know I've heard that there's chemical depression where people have to take some sort of chemical in order to balance whatever chemical it is that's, I don't know if it's a dopamine or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm not a...
Oh, he's talking about
not a
dopamine and
scientist.
serotonin, yeah.
Yeah. To balance that out, and then they feel better. So I mean, I can't deny that person's experience, right? They're having that experience,
right? But that doesn't mean that they have some mental chemical imbalance that's being corrected with the drug. It could just mean that they're masking their emotions with the drug.
It could mean that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But that's just what I'm told, right? Like that's the experience of some people. But I was asking earlier about this sort of negative mentality that some people have, and it's a fairly prevalent one. And you can't blame people for having it, if their job sucks or their home life is awful or their family's abusive or whatever it is that's happening to that person in their life. Those negative circumstances could create sort of patterns of thought in one's mind that are also very negative patterns. Maybe thoughts of unworthiness, like, well, I must suck. Maybe it's not me. Or maybe it's not them. Maybe it's me. I'm not worthy, or I'm not a good person, or just kind of this parroting of these negativities that people can go through in their minds. I know I've experienced some of that. But I think if you stay in those places and you keep repeating negative things about yourself, about how stupid you are, how awful a person, I must be a bad person, etc. Oh, it's going to be a terrible day today. Just always being negative. Couldn't that put you in a place where you're more likely to suffer from depression? And is it possible to begin changing that? Not overnight. You're not going to go from depressed to happy in 24 hours. But I think
you really said an important thing there. You said that these things are happening to people. And there's no better way to guarantee unhappiness, or no better way to bet on unhappiness than to have things happen to you rather than happening to things. Because when you are at cause in the center of your life, rather than sort of, this thing's happening to me, the teacher doesn't like me, my girlfriend or boyfriend doesn't like me, my parents won't let me do what I want. These are all victim statements. Fire the teacher, fire the boyfriend, fire the girlfriend, and here's some exciting stuff when it comes to parents. You are free to leave. Generally, I mean, not everybody's free to leave, but you can go. Good news, you can get a job and you can go support yourself, and you don't have to deal with that whole parenting thing. Or you can try to redefine the relationship. Don't do it from a petulant standpoint. Do it from a standpoint of power. I'm bringing something new to the relationship. And, I don't know what that is. What do your parents want?
You're talking about a major, and I'm glad you highlighted what I said there, because I was actually thinking about pointing that out as well. When you take the viewpoint of things are happening to you, it's a very kind of defeatist, sit back and let it happen attitude, whereas if you can create how you are in response to things that happen, because things are happening, right? And it's a big it's a big step or a big jump to come to the conclusion that it's all you that's creating those things in your life. That's kind of like this metaphysical idea that maybe going a little bit too far for some people to really be able to grasp that.
Well, I think everybody understands that they have control over
you have control of how you
relationships.
think, right? You have control of how you feel, I think.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.